Where does UConn stand in the race for the 26 recruits? We're going to bring in Jake Weingartner of Stock Risers coming up. You're on the Hoop Scout.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby. Home of the champions. Let's go.
All right. As promised, we bring in Jake Weingartner, founder of stockrisers.com. Absolutely just my go-to when it comes to recruiting. Jake, really appreciate you coming on, man. We'll jump right into it, dude. Like I did a show based off of who UConn has offers to. And I basically said there were priorities and then there's offers. Let's start with, I think I'm not even going to start with the one that we talked about a pre-show, got some intel on, but I do want to start with a guy that I think most people in Husky Nation are really interested in is Dylan Mingo.
Yeah, first and foremost, thanks for having me on. I always appreciate it. But yeah, Dylan Mingo, obviously is top 10 prospect, and that's right down Dan Hurley's alley. But I think the most important thing is, and I said this, I think, in an article a couple of months ago about Dylan, is he's a really good systematic fit. It's not just he's a 5-star, let's go get him. It makes a lot of sense. And, he's an East Coast guard. So, I do think he's capable mentally of handling, playing for a team that's championship caliber every year and in that contention. And, I think he's all about fit. Obviously, he's visiting Penn State. And I think that kind of, threw people off a little bit because top 10 prospect Penn State doesn't really go together, but they have an amazing coaching staff. And, I do think that fit-wise, he's looking at every single option, whether that's UConn or Penn State. But, I think Dan Hurley and the staff has an edge right now. I think they are the leader. So obviously we'll see where things go with the rest of his visits, but I do think he's going to go where he feels the best fit.
Now, maybe doesn't his brother go to Penn State, Caden?
Yes.
Is that part of the reason why Penn State is in the mix?
For sure, but I think at the same time they're two different players, two different situations. And using an official visit's not just we're going to take a visit and that's it. I do think they're actually being considered.
Okay.
So, like I said, though, I do think UConn's spearheading the recruitment right now. I do think they're the leader. So we'll see how the rest of the visits go and, kind of see where things land with this timeline.
Yeah, no, I think you're 1,000% right. I think what we've talked about Dylan is, you said a systematic fit. I don't think there's a better fit, and we're going to talk about other guards here in a second, for UConn, and I think that's why he's the priority, because he just looks like Dan Hurley's type, right? Long, has a little bit of work to do on specific things, but is going to come in and be a type of player that can fit into their system, not seamlessly, but almost seamlessly, right? And I think that's part of it. They're kind of going back to that this year with the transfer they got with Silas DeMary Jr., like a bigger guard, someone that can get downhill and be a lob threat to Terrace and others, but also can handle some of the physicality of the Big East.
100%. And, he's also a really good floor general. Like, I think he's capable of, reading what defenses are doing, especially in the Big East. And like you said, more physical. Hassan Diarra is a great example. He was, not the strongest guy in the world, but you knew the toughness was there and the physical toughness. And I think that's kind of the DNA that, Hurley and his staff are trying to establish, especially when it comes to the guard position, because to be quite frank, that's probably the most important position, especially when it comes to like conference play and, moving along to March Madness. So I do think fit-wise, like I mentioned before, Mingo is going to look for the best fit, and I do think UConn is the best fit for him at the end of the day.
Okay. What does that mean for another big guard that they have in their sights in Colvin Landry? Right? Did I say his name right?
Yeah. I love that kid. I do think that's another guy that could play. He could play next to good guards. He plays with Kevin Savage on his high school team right now, who I think eventually will be a UConn target as well. I do think the staff is putting in a extreme effort. I know they were in, I think, 3 or 4 times during the recruiting period, but he's very unique. You talk about athleticism and, being able to fit from an athletic standpoint and toughness wise. He was a 5-star football recruit when he started high school, which I think is very, very unique. It's not easy to be a 5-star football prospect, put it down, and to become, a fringe 5-star prospect in basketball. I think that's pretty difficult to do. So I think that just speaks a lot on his athleticism, but I think also the work ethic part, which, is very important. If you were to go to a school like UConn, you got to be mentally tough and be able to handle it. And I think he's literally a perfect fit, and he could play next to whoever. And just to see the effort that Hurley's put in, I don't think he would do that for a kid that he doesn't think he has a really good shot at. So that's a guy I think UConn is in a really good place with. And,
Yeah.
when all is said and done, depending how his visit goes, which I believe is the first week of October, I think
it is.
UConn will be in a really good place with him.
October 4th, he visits Stores. I think you're pretty spot on. It's so funny that you mentioned football because two things. One, I didn't know he played football, but when you watch him, you're like, now I'm like, yeah, he played football. Like it just his body type, right? He looks like a 6'6" tight end that just happens to be really agile, like the way that first round picks are agile, like Kyle Pitts for Atlanta that played at Florida. Like so that makes a ton of sense. He's 6'6", he has a 6'10" wingspan. Do they look at him as more of kind of like because he kind of reminds me of, and Solo's not as big, but kind of like a Solo ball in respect that Solo was a decent shooter in high school, but now he's become this elite 3-point shooter. But they kind of thought he was going to be more of like an Andre Jackson type coming in, and now he's more on of Jordan Hawkins. So
Right.
So do you kind of see what are they kind of envisioning some of that stuff there?
Yes, and I think the plus part about that is Colbin's been able to keep a defense honest when it comes to his shooting. It's not just he's a former football player, freak athlete, so just let him
Sure.
shoot 3-pointers. And like you said with Solo, he wasn't a knockdown 3-point shooter at all in high school, but I think that's the beauty of going in, trusting your work and developing. And I think Colbin's another example, like I mentioned, work ethic. If he goes in and was a 35% 3-point shooter in high school, there's no reason you can't go to college, work on it, and become a 40% 3-point shooter. So, that is a guy. I do think he'll be a project. I don't think he'll be a one and done guy, but, you look at taking the first year and really honing in on working on that shooting from behind the arc to combine that with his explosiveness at the rim. I think he's a guy that development wise can really turn into something special. So, that's a guy. I'm a huge fan of his game. I've been watching him over the past year or two, so I think he's just a really good player.
That right there shows how locked in you are with these kids because he is not a 35% shooter. He's a 34.7% 3-point shooter in high school. That's pretty damn good, dude. You're in your car. You don't got screens around you. You're not looking shit up. That's really damn good. So that but you're spot on. Like it's a really great point. Stats aside, also think Hurley has to love the football mentality. He's talked about how he probably should have been a football coach because of his grit and coming up, and I'm reading his book right now about his his development under his father and all that stuff. So it makes
a year earlier he could have lined up next to Skylar Bell. So
that's true. Yeah, that would have been pretty
deadly.
dope.
That would be deadly.
So the other guard-ish and kind of combo guard is Junior County. What is it about him, and is he in the mix?
Yes, he's in the mix. Obviously, with the visit coming up, they're definitely in the mix. I think the best part about him is he wants to get guys involved. I think he's one of the best playmakers in the entire class. And, we talk about being able to read a defense and making the extra pass and finding guys on the back door. I think that's exactly what Hurley likes. I think he likes playmakers leading his offense. Not saying Junior would go in and be PG1 right away, but I do think that if he were to end up picking UConn, he'd be able to come in and fight for a spot. And obviously, he'd get good minutes. But, in the situation where he'd come in as a freshman and have to come off the bench, you want a guy that's going to make plays. And, he does that really well. I think he's also developing offensively in terms of his shooting and being able to score. But when you talk about floor generals and, long guards like we talked about, his size might throw people off, but his wingspan, he's got a really long wingspan for a 6'3" guard, 6'4" guard. So I think he's a guy that would be able to come in, make a lot of plays offensively, and, even be able to rebound at a high rate too for the guard position.
So on Junior in particular, and really the three of these guys, before we even get to Cole Kluwer and his situation, have you heard anything about what the specific pitch has been from UConn. And the reason why I'm asking that is because we've talked about this. We talked about it on the last pod when we were talking about recruiting, which is UConn fans need to understand that after this year, if the season goes the way Dan Hurley and everybody wants it to go, they could lose almost up to 10 players on this 15-man roster between guys losing eligibility. They have 5 guys that are going no matter what, whether they want to stay or not, they can't play. And then you have 3 to 5 potential guys that could go pro. And that's not even talking about if someone happened to be disgruntled and wanted to transfer. So this could be a 3 to 4 person class, no matter what they want to do. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think that's, you're talking about someone like Junior County. I think they're looking for guys, especially the high school level, that can come in and make that type of impact right away, because the transfer portal is unpredictable in terms of you don't know who's going to enter. There's going to be 1,000 people to enter, but you don't know which type of caliber players are going to enter. And at the end of the day, like we mentioned, not everyone's for UConn. So, you got to take advantage of the high school kids out there that might be prepared for UConn. And I think Junior County is one of those guys where the pitch may be, you're going to come in here and we're going to need you to make plays. We know you're capable of passing at a high rate. We know you don't turn the ball over a lot. So you're going to have to come in even as a freshman and play 20 to 25 minutes. And you don't know who you're going to be around. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to personally come in and make an impact. And for guys that are high school seniors to hear that from a national championship winning head coach, the type of burden you'd have. But I think some guys want it. You want to come in and play regardless of what the money looks like. Guys don't want to sit on the bench all year. So I think the pitch is more of a basketball standpoint to where you're going to have to come in and play and make an impact for a team that's going to contend every single year.
No, I think you're spot on. It's a great point. Okay, probably the last guy we'll talk about of consequence, unless something crazy happens, which is Cole Kluwer, right? What do you hear is the latest? Because what I've heard down here in the hoop state, not the hoops capital, but the hoop state of North Carolina, is that NC State is going to be the spot. That's not official. I think he's still taking a visit, maybe some other places. So there's obviously always a chance that someone can blow your hair back and, you go to Alabama, or maybe it's North Carolina. But what I've heard is Will Wade doing his thing, and he'll end up being a Wolfpack. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is a Will Wade and Coach Hurley battle, which is a pretty intense battle. So I have heard similar things. I have heard UConn's not out. It's not, NC State 95%, UConn 5%. It's still a battle. I do think NC State's got the edge right now, and I think Will Wade's got a really good plan for him, as does Coach Hurley. But I think Matthew Abel at NC State's a good example where Will's going to play. If you're a 5-star freshman, 4-star freshman, you're going to come in and play. I don't think he's recruiting you to sit on the bench all year. I think he's, been pretty open that, if you earn a spot, you're going to play. And like we mentioned, it's about wanting to play, but I think it's also a toughness aspect. I don't know if UConn's necessarily the best fit for him, but I do think he's a guy that if he were to commit to UConn, he'd be able to figure it out, just because he's a knockdown shooter. He's got good size, can score on all 3 levels. And his game's not one of those games where you got to really fit in the system to make it work. It's something that can be developed, and I don't think he's going to be a one-and-done guy. I do think he's a really good player, but I do think NC State does have the edge. I don't think it's necessarily a money thing. I do think it's, fit, what you're able to handle, and, who's coaching you. And like I said, you got 2 really, really good coaches and 1 really, really good player. So I do think it'll come down to those 2. Obviously, depending if anything changes over the next few weeks, which is definitely possible.
Fair enough. Before we let you go, I just have to mention this. If you're watching this on YouTube, especially if you're on your TV, scan that QR code. What we have is we partnered with the Connecticut Alliance for Boys and Girls Club. All proceeds go to them. I take none of this. And in fact, if you scan that QR code, it'll bring you to a link where you can pay $10 a month. You can change that. That's the minimum, $10 a month.
Make sure you scan the QR code. Make sure you
Scan
scan
that.
it.
Yeah, scan that QR code. This helps kids all over Connecticut. And if you're an NC State fan, you just heard you're probably getting cold Kluwer. Hit us up with some money. Help some kids out that live in Connecticut that need better resources. You're getting a good player. I mean, come on, let's be give us a consolation prize. But no, really excited to partner with them this year in the basketball season and try to get them some funding outside of what they normally get. So, but Jake, listen, man, one takeaway from this recruiting season. Tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like hasn't been a ton of commits. Like it feels like nobody's committing. What is that?
Yeah, you make a really good point. I didn't expect there to be a lot more mid-major commitments at this point in the season in the top 150 than high major commitments. I do think, obviously the landscape's changed. In the back of your mind, I know Duran Rippey actually mentioned it recently, where he's like, picking a school is difficult because who's really going to stay loyal? You'll get me as a commit, and then a year later, 6 months later, you're going to be in the transfer portal.
Right.
Looking for a guy to play over me. So I do think the transfer portal plays a lot into that, but I also do think, it's a really high caliber class. And, I do think guys want to make the right decision both on and off the court. But I do think the transfer portal plays a lot into it from what I've heard. So hopefully, with the early signing period coming up and with the season starting and guys getting visits out the way, we'll definitely see a lot more commitments. Colbin Landry is a great example. I think you can tell with the visits moving up that he's really trying to speed things up, and I think a lot of guys are going to follow suit. So
Okay.
I think things will start moving in October for sure.
What are the things that you like to hear? Forget about like UConn for a second, or even the Big East as a whole. What do players tell you that they want to hear from coaches? Like, give us the insight. Trust me, I know what coaches want to hear. I know that they don't want to hear about NIL. I know that they don't want to, they don't want to be to bring it back to Dan Hurley. Am I a coach or am I a banker? Like he doesn't want to worry about that. But from a player perspective, what are the tenets that you kind of hear over and over again that make or break someone coming to a school?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, players just love communication in general. They want you to communicate, whether it's, daily or weekly. They want to hear from you. And I think that's something that a lot of players have said to me about, school A reaches out to me, twice or three times a week, and my family. And that stands out to me. But in terms of what they like to hear, I do think a lot of it's basketball related
Sure.
nowadays. And like I mentioned with Duran Rippey, you want loyalty. You're going to want to be replaced before you even get on campus, So I think that's important as well, just being told and being reassured that you're a priority, that, what your role is going to be. And I know it's easier said than done to know your role before you get there, because a coach can say you're going to come in and play 30 minutes and then you come in and you don't play at all, So
Right.
I just think, the honesty part, you're able to read a coach as a recruit. What they're telling the truth about, what they're not telling the truth about. And I think lastly, just, knowing what their expectations are. If you have a coach like John Calipari who's like, come in and, we only want you here a year, we're expecting you to go to the draft the next year. I do think there's a lot of coaches out there that are very straightforward, but I think that's what the players want. So they want communication, they want it daily, weekly, but I think they want to know the truth. And I think that's very important to them nowadays.
Okay. One of the only shows that we don't have on the Big East Energy Network on Big Energy Media Pods is Providence. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on them. So hopefully we can satisfy some of the itch from the Friar faithful.
I got a lot of Friar news, so that's perfect.
Okay, cool. The two big ones that I know, and one of them has to do with Connecticut, right? Abdu Torre, Connecticut High School Player of the Year. Is he Providence bound?
There's a good chance. Providence got a lot of recruiting momentum right now. It may not seem like it because they're not getting 5-6 guys, but you can tell that they're trying to put their names in the mix with a lot of really high caliber guys. And not that it's Providence, so it's surprising. I think it's surprising because they don't do that every year. It's very new. I don't even think it's a sense of urgency thing. I think, Kim English, and they probably got good NIL now, but I also think that they have a good plan for these guys. They got great facilities, great campus, and they're playing in the Big East. I think obviously Abdu's a great example, but I also think Caleb Holt's another great example that, they're all in on a top 10 kid and they feel like they have a really good chance. And their recruiting pitch is simple. You're going to come in and play.
It's particular with Caleb, because I honestly, and this is, I'm not the expert. You do this all the time. Abdu Toure, I think, is Providence bound like that. I honestly think that's going to happen.
Really good chance.
What about Caleb Holt? I'd said on our Big East Energy weekly show that I thought that was a long shot, but the more I'm starting to see, not just from the fan base, but just like you said, I feel like there's a concerted effort from this organization, which is basically what I'm calling teams now, because that's what they are, to essentially try to get this kid, because it totally transforms their program, and it's a culture changer for them. As much as the fan base is great, like forget about that. But as far as the product on the court, like that changes things for them from year to year if they can land a guy like Caleb Holt.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about what players want to hear, if the program's telling you you're going to come in and have the keys to the program, that's very hard to turn down, in addition to what you'd be getting off the court benefit-wise. So I don't think it's a long shot at all. Just talking to people behind the scenes and, knowing the coaches on the Providence staff, they love Caleb Holt. They're putting in an extreme effort. Kim English has been out to see him multiple times. Corey Wright's been out to see him, a bunch of their assistant coaches. It's a full staff effort. And when you have that as a player, school is all in and they're not messing around. So I think Providence actually has a really good chance. Obviously he's still taking visits and moving around. I think he's at Arizona right now. So I do think Providence has a really good chance, though, and it's something fans should be excited about. Even if they don't land him, the fact that, you went all in on a 5-star recruit and you're now in the mix with a lot of 5-star recruits, that means your program's trending upwards. So I think this is all a really good sign.
And I asked this question because I did make a bet online with Divine Providence Pod. They're not on our network, but they're friends of the family. And I said, if they get Caleb Holt, I have to wear a Friar shirt all week on my show, and proclaim on the Hoops Cap, our rival team, that the Friars have the best fan base in the Big East.
There's a chance you're going to be wearing that shirt. So I hope you have one.
I home field. Luckily for me, I did, when we started this thing. Home field hooked me up with a shirt for every team. So I literally do have a black with white lettering Friar shirt, which is exactly what they'll love. I probably won't love wearing it, but for the sake of our network in the Big East, I will 100% bite the bullet there. Before I let you go, any other Big East news that you can shed light on in terms of recruiting?
Darius Wobbington's a 2027 5-star kid. He's going to officially visit Providence also. So
okay,
I just did an interview with him. He speaks on them very, very highly. That visit's going to be November 2nd, and then they had an assistant coach in for him yesterday. So big news for them as well. But I'll be flowing out more Big East news on my Twitter over the next few days.
Sounds good. Well, you know where to find him. Actually, I don't see it on there, so tell people where they can find you. Stockrisers.com, but where else on socials?
Go to stockrisers.com, add Jake Weingartner on Twitter, and make sure you scan that QR code also.
So. Yeah, man, let's get some money to those kids, man. It's a honestly love it. It's a former basketball coach of mine that runs that whole organization, so I'm super excited about partnering with them. Jake, we really appreciate you coming on. As always, you're more than welcome to come on and break any news you have on Big East, or UConn, Providence, the whole deal.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
All right, we'll see Jake next time. That was Jake Weingartner of stockrisers.com. Make sure you go check him out. Basically talking about the three guards, wings that are in the mix for UConn. Dylan Mingo feels like there's a very good chance. Whenever he says that, he's trying not to be like give you a number, but I've worked with him before. That is kind of like, 70-30. That's the way I would kind of look at it. Same with the rest of those guys. All of the people that we mentioned, Colbin Landrew and Junior County, I feel like 70% and above. When I talk to Jake and I listen to what he's talking about, how they fit, how they're being talked about by the staff. That to me, those are three really good chances that UConn grabs those three players. You may ask, why so many guards? Why aren't we going after bigger guys? They're still transfer portal. They're still international guys. They got an international kid that's a freshman that's 7'2". You have Eric Riva. The people that are likely they're going to lose, point guard, shooting guard, wings, they're trying to replenish that talent. Cole Kluwer looks like he's headed to NC State. I feel like it's more of a sure thing. Jake says that UConn's still in the mix, but I've heard otherwise. Not going to argue about it. Not a big deal. Cole Kluwer, don't expect him to be in stores. Let's just put it that way. I think if you're a State fan, you got to be happy. I guess he could potentially go to Alabama or Florida, but UConn is not going to be the spot for Cole. That's it for today. Hoopscap. Check out bigenergymediapods.com. We are partnering with Connecticut Boys and Girls Club, the Alliance of Connecticut Boys and Girls Club. Make sure you are donating to them. I'll put that QR code back up. That is a link. It will go directly to a pay button that starts at $10 a month. You can obviously do more. If you're wondering how to just make a one-time donation, we can talk about that as well. Make sure if that's the case, make sure you email me. I believe we have an email called bigenergypromos.com or Big Energy Promo. Let me pause and find this. Instead of fumbling around with words, it's on the screen here. Email us at bigeastenergypromos@gmail.com. Right there, bigeastenergypromos@gmail.com. Scan that QR code if you want to make it easy on yourself. Last thing, make sure you like and subscribe to all of our podcasts, all across Apple, Spotify. If you give us a 5-star review, we will read it on the air on any show, probably mostly all of them on Big East Energy Network. Whether you like the Hoopscap, whether you're like a Holy Nova fan, Pirate Vibes, new edition Roll Blob, you will also be entered into a giveaway contest we have books that we have potentially for you, the Dan Hurley book, the Jim Calhoun book that's getting ready to come out. We have tickets across the entire Big East, conference for games if you're in different areas, and signed memorabilia. We're going to do it all. So get yourself involved in our Big East Energy Promos at gmail.com and give us some 5-star reviews. Give us any reviews. If it's 4-star, if you're not happy with it, tell us why. I would love to hear from you if you didn't like the show, to understand why you don't like it before you trash us on social media. So love to everybody that watches the show. Some really great news there from Jake Weingartner on UConn, and throwing us a little Providence news with Abdu Toure and Caleb Holt, both as big-time possibilities for the Friars. I guess I'm going to have to wear that shirt after all. At least it looks like it. We will see you next time on the Hoopscap. Enjoy your weekend, and we will talk to you soon.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yeah. UConn, baby.